So I've been using the Samsung Galaxy XR headset for a few weeks now, and in some ways, it is the best XR headset that I've ever used. It is incredible. It is absolutely mind-blowing how good this thing is, especially for an Android user. But on the other end, there are some things that are very glaring and some flaws on this headset that we just really have to talk about. So we're going to get into all of that in this full review. So with all that being said, let's get right into it and let's talk about the Samsung Galaxy XR. So whenever I first started using the Galaxy XR headset, I was absolutely blown away. You have to remember that normally I haven't been a VR person. I've just been reviewing Android phones and tablets. But after the Apple Vision Pro released, it really did pique my interest. I started using the MetaQuest 3 and the MetaQuest 3S, and I really got into the VR ecosystem. But we Android users, we didn't have anything like that. And then Samsung decides to drop a VR headset at like half the price of the Apple Vision Pro, and then they started throwing in a lot of freebies out there. And the Vision Pro, they didn't really release their own controllers, but Samsung, hey, they are selling their own controllers as well for this headset. So I was so excited for the Galaxy XR. Of course, I had to pre-order it. And whenever I used it over the course of these past few weeks, I just have to say it was awesome, but also frustrating. And I just have to keep it real. First of all, the $1,800 price is large, and I understand it is still exciting that we are coming in at like half the price of Apple's option out there, and that is a big aha moment. And of course, we are getting far better displays here with these lenses than we were getting from something like the MetaQuest 3. It is a substantial upgrade, and whenever I was watching entertainment on my Galaxy XR, it was a joy to use. It does have a little strap or a cord that actually goes to your pocket because there is a separate battery bank that you carry with you. But the headset is actually quite light on the Galaxy XR, and whenever you're watching entertainment, it just looks so good. But the big problem I had with it, it was really the comfort. You see, they didn't really think about long-term usage with this because there doesn't seem to be a lot of good options as far as accessories because the head strap, it just seems to be built in. It's not something that you could just take off and you could just buy a third-party head strap for. So I had the MetaQuest 3 and it was a little uncomfortable, so I just bought a cheap $20 or $30 head strap and instantly my experience was better. But you can't do that with the Galaxy XR. Now I know there are going to be some workarounds because I was able to actually find some different ways to support my head at the top with the Galaxy XR. I was able to just get something off my Kiwi head strap and just use it on the top and wrap it around. And even though it was a little bit janky, it actually did make the experience a lot more comfortable. So I'm sure there will be some accessories that will attach to maybe the sides of the Galaxy XR headset and wrap around the top of your head so that it can support the headset a little more and it won't be quite as uncomfortable. So there are some comfort issues, and I don't think people are really talking a lot about that. Of course, a lot of these reviewers, they tried it for 20 minutes, and it was really annoying that people weren't mentioning that it was uncomfortable. But if you're actually using this for longer periods of time, you're going to notice a lot of pressure on the top of your head. Now, I don't want to say that you shouldn't buy this because of that, because I found that a lot of alternatives are going to come out. There are going to be ways to improve the comfort, and if you improve the comfort, the experience is absolutely incredible. So the entertainment aspect of this, or the reason you would get this, is because you have a lot of options for streaming apps. They have a YouTube app, of course, natively. They have a lot of streaming apps that come over from Android, and they work very well on this headset. This is also an Android headset as well, so you're not just going to get access to basic VR apps, you'll get access to things like your social media apps. A lot of apps outside of the Meta apps, because they're being a little stingy, you will get access to X or other platforms out there, even something like TikTok you could use. There are a lot of cool things going on here that I think a lot of you who are in the Android ecosystem, you would enjoy. You can get away from everything around you. You could have a much better high fidelity experience than you would on something like a Quest 3. But there are still some problems with it. For one, you have to pay $250 for the controllers. They come with something like a MetaQuest 3 for $500. You also have to think about other aspects of it, like the head straps and the comfort level. I do think you will be able to improve the comfort and you'll enjoy it, but right up front, it won't be quite as comfortable. Now, it does come with multiple different adapters. It comes with a slim piece and also a thicker piece, and then there's this little cushion that you can move between them. Or you could just have the cushion on by itself without those extra spacers. And I have to say that was actually my preferred method of actually using this, was just putting the cushion on. But either way, there are some options, and depending on your head, maybe it will be very comfortable for you. But I will say at least there will be some ways to improve it. I know there's already products on Amazon that can attach to the sides of a basic VR headset and go over the top. So you will have options, but the MetaQuest, it doesn't have that problem. You get the controllers for free. It's much cheaper, and the experience is actually still pretty good, even though you don't get OLED screens. You don't get OLED lenses or anything like that. You're still going to have a good viewing experience. If I were to compare it, I would say the MetaQuest 3 is sort of like 720p. I get the resolution is a little bit higher, but that's sort of what it looks like in day-to-day usage whenever you are watching things. And whenever you go up to this, it's almost like a 2K experience. Once again, I know that the lenses have a higher resolution, but to my eyes, that's about what it looks like. You are still going to see little glare, of course, depending on the lights in the room and things like that, so I did notice some glare in my headset, but the experience is going to be better. But is it really $1,300 better? Is it really that much better than a Quest 3? There are other advantages to a Quest 3 as well. For example, the Quest 3 is going to have a larger gaming library for now, and you can also have multiple user profiles on something like the MetaQuest 3. So if you want to have more profiles on your Galaxy XR, I don't know why, at least as of the release of it, you cannot have multiple Android profiles. So I can't just give this headset to my wife or my daughter, because my daughter might get on it and then go through all my social media, right? That's not something you want to have to deal with your kids. So you would prefer, I know a lot of us, we would prefer for there to be extra profiles. And when you're spending so much on a headset, not having that feature, I get it. Apple is sort of used to just neglecting those things, but we on Android, we actually would prefer our headset to be able to be used with multiple people. So I just can't help but to look around and realize that in this season, in the holiday season, and even beyond, it's gonna be really hard for people to scrounge up another $1,800 just to buy a cool piece of tech. And I think it's really unrealistic for a lot of tech influencers out there to just gloat about their fancy $3,000 headsets or even $2,000 headsets when realistically your average person is just struggling to get by, especially when you're trying to get presents for your kids. When you have a family like mine, $2,000 is not easy to come by. So I do understand this Galaxy XR, it is a better value than the Apple Vision Pro, but that doesn't mean it's actually a good value for most people. Most of us can't afford to spend $2,000 on a headset, and if you really want to get into VR and you want to have a good experience, I would recommend getting the MetaQuest 3 because it is very good for families. It is really good for people who have multiple profiles. You can share your apps if you're the primary person on the headset. You could share it with other people in your family, and you also have a lot of other accessories you can get. So it's going to be a good way to get into VR with a reasonable good resolution, but at a cheaper cost. At one point, I actually saw the MetaQuest 3S on sale for like $200 at Costco. It was like $250 at other places around the holiday season. So with those prices, if you're wanting to just dabble into VR, that's a great way to do it, and it's much more affordable, especially if things are tight for your family right now. I think we tech influencers have to come back to reality, and something like the MetaQuest 3 or the MetaQuest 3S, they are going to be more practical for most people. But if you are a tech enthusiast, you love Android, you're all in on the Android ecosystem, you want an incredible display for your eyes, you want to use it for productivity, I do still think the Galaxy XR is great. And that's why I'm going to spend a whole lot of this video talking about how great it really is. But it doesn't mean it's great for everyone. And that's something that we have to consider. And the Galaxy XR, what it's meant for is a little bit of productivity too. With the linking feature it has, it can actually link up to your Galaxy Book Pro or your Galaxy laptops, so that's great. But at least natively, it's not hooking up to something like a normal laptop. You would have to use an app like Virtual Desktop, which is very well known. A lot of people use Virtual Desktop anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. If you can't connect to your normal Windows laptop, just buy Virtual Desktop, install it on your computer, and you'll have a great experience. But it's not going to be perfect. Of course, that experience depends on your Wi-Fi connection, and you want to make sure to have your computer linked up actually with an Ethernet cable if you can. But if you do that, I'm telling you, Virtual Desktop is amazing. Or even if you link it up with your Galaxy Book, you're going to have a good experience for productivity. Now, there are some other things you could do on here, of course. You can play your Steam games. You can also link it up with Xbox Game Pass, and you can actually play that. You could also play GeForce Now games. I was actually using GeForce Now on it, having a terrific time gaming. There was a little bit of lag there, but despite that, I was able to game in my office, and it really looked really good. Now, I can't really comment on gaming with the controllers and how good the controllers are, because my controllers, they did get delayed a significant amount of time. You can typically get them discounted a little if you buy them at the same time, but sadly my controllers were delayed so long that I just had to get this video out and let you know what I think about the Galaxy XR. But I do think you're going to have a great experience, of course, gaming in a higher fidelity. Whenever you have a better resolution, better lenses, that's going to be great whenever you are playing games wirelessly, whether it is through Steam and playing your Steam VR games or whatever you're deciding to game on. Now, they do actually have a bigger library than what I expected. Like, they actually do have Arizona Sunshine on here. They do have a lot of VR games that actually came right over. I'm actually hopeful for the future of VR because I think this Android XR headset is only the beginning. This Galaxy XR headset, because we are going to see the Android ecosystem start to build. What if Motorola decides to build a headset? Or what if another company does? And then we have 3 or 4 or 5 Android XR headsets running that ecosystem. I bet we would see a lot more apps being supported. We would see it grow, and it might even grow eventually to be bigger than the MetaQuest. So we don't have quite the app library that we have on the MetaQuest right now. We don't have quite as many games, but honestly, it's really, really close. Now, I am so impressed with this Galaxy XR, and I want to keep talking about it. But first, I do want to talk about our sponsor, Whisker. You see, when you put on a VR headset for the first time, you're going to be absolutely blown away because maybe you've never experienced anything like it before. Virtual reality is pretty impressive, but one of the worst things that can happen to us in our lives is when we go back to reality and then we see something like a nasty, stinky litter box and we realize that our life is really stinky. But one of the best gifts that you can give to someone, especially in this holiday season, it's going to be the gift of time. We often don't have enough time in this hustle and bustle culture, so one thing that you could get someone who's a pet owner, one great gift you could buy someone is going to be the Litter Robot. They have a lot of different options between the Litter Robot Evo or the Litter Robot 4 or even the Litter Robot 5 or 5 Pro. And these litter robots are tremendous because what they do is they actually take the nasty, stinky mess of a cat, they let that litter clump up, and then they put that in a trash bag, and they sift all the good litter away, and then they bring it back so it can be used again. They do all of this without you having to be involved. You just get a notification on your phone whenever the trash is full, and you can empty the trash around once a week, depending on how many cats you have. This will save you time. It will give you peace of mind. So these litter robots are tremendous gifts, and I would definitely recommend giving that gift to someone this year, or even giving that gift to yourself, because time is something that we cannot get back. But it is something that we can save if we do actually bring good tech products into our life that help us to save time. So if you are interested in the litter robot in any fashion, whether it's the Litter Robot Evo or even all the way up to something like the Litter Robot 5 Pro, whatever you're interested in, feel free to check the links in the description and you could check those out there. And with all that being said, I want to say thank you to our sponsor Whisker, and now we are going to go back to our video to talk about the Galaxy XR. So if you are an Android user, if you use Android apps to get some work done, you also want to bring over your Android library, play some Android games maybe like Genshin Impact from the headset. Of course, if you're playing directly from the headset, no, you're not going to play Genshin Impact on high settings, but it is still very playable on this headset. So it's a really good XR headset. I know some of you might want a little bit more detail into gaming and exactly how far you could push it, and I get those are things you should consider, right? Sadly, I don't have the controllers to push that, but I will say it's going to be good. It's going to game very well, and it's going to have a little more power even, not by much, but a little more power than the Meta Quest 3, and you're going to have such a good experience with the displays here. The biggest problem by far with this headset, it's going to be the comfort. It's going to be the fact that a lot of people are going to have a lot of pressure on the front of their face. It's either on the front or the back, and it's very difficult when you don't have a head strap over the top. And I am just blown away in a negative way. Like, Samsung should have saw what happened when the Vision Pro released and how they really wanted to look super revolutionary, but then they looked like fools whenever people said how uncomfortable it was because it would go around the back of your head, but sadly there was actually nothing to help with comfort over the top, and they didn't release the band with it. Like, the band that would make it more comfortable, they did actually have one, but they sort of hid it away, and that was a shame. Samsung didn't even give us that option. They don't have a second band. They don't even have replaceable bands, and that is a nightmare for me because that would have made this a game changer. That would have made this the absolutely greatest headset I could buy. I would definitely buy it in a heartbeat and keep it, and it would be my favorite headset forever. But sadly, without that head strap over the top to make it more comfortable, well, it's not quite as good. So for me, I have to say, I'm really waiting for some extra accessories to come out to make it more comfortable. And when those come out, and until then, I'm just going to use other ways to make it more comfortable. But until those come out, I would say it's not going to be perfect. If you want a better VR headset, if you want a headset that is way better for entertainment, if you want something for productivity, and you're all about Android, this is going to be a terrific option for you. But if you don't have that money to spend, if you're wanting to share a headset with your kids, if you're new to VR, all of those things would make me say go buy a Meta Quest 3. Enjoy it. Even buy a Meta Quest 3S with all of the crazy sales going on. That is a great way to start in VR. Don't just buy a VR headset for $2,000 and let it sit. A lot of Apple Vision Pro users are doing that. If you do, at least buy a headset that you don't mind sitting. So put something like the Meta Quest 3S on the side, and that's fine, and then just get it out for some fitness or some gaming. Or buy a Meta Quest 3 and enjoy about 80% of what you would on this headset anyway. You could even sideload apps on the Meta Quest 3 if you know what you're doing. But the Galaxy XR, it's really a premium experience. If you want something that's half the cost of the Apple Vision Pro, you want something in the Android ecosystem, and if you're willing to deal with some extra modifications for comfort, this is by far going to be the best VR headset you could buy, and it's worth buying. So thank you so much for watching this review. If you liked it, please give me a like. That would mean a ton to my channel. If you want to see more about Android and even Galaxy XR, I will be covering it a little bit over time. This channel is all about Android phones and tablets. So if you are interested in that type of content, feel free to subscribe and click the like button on this video. You could also check the links in the description. That is a great way to support me personally and to support my family. And another thing you could do if you really like my Android content is to check out some other videos where I talk about all types of Android stuff through the year. And no matter what you're going through, no matter what your life is like this week, I do hope you have a great day, and I really, really hope you enjoy your week.